The butterfly effect was a doctoral thesis written in the 1960s, 1963 actually, by Edward Lorenz. And the butterfly effect was laughed out of the New York Academy of Sciences because it was ridiculous. The butterfly effect, as Lorenz stated it, said that the butterfly could flap its wings on one side of the world and set molecules of air in motion that in turn moved other molecules of air that would then move other molecules of air that would eventually create a hurricane on the other side of the world. The butterfly effect. It was ridiculous, but it was interesting. And because it was interesting, it kind of hung around forever in urban legend and myth and stories until the mid-90s when physics professors proved the butterfly effect was accurate and viable and worked every single time. And not just with butterflies either. And not just with molecules of air. The butterfly effect worked with every form of moving matter, including people. The butterfly effect worked every time, and so they designated it, they gave it the status of a law. Just like the law of gravity, the butterfly effect is the law of sensitive dependence upon initial conditions. I know things happen. I know that somebody is focused in on this right now who is going through the worst time in their life. If you're that person, here's what I want you to know. That if you're going through the worst time in your life, you can just take a breath and understand that it's normal. Because we're all either in a crisis, coming out of a crisis, or headed for a crisis. That's just part of being with us on this planet. It may feel horrible right now, but you are still here, which means if you're here, you haven't finished what you were put here to do. The greatest part of your life, your purpose, has yet to be lived. There is more fun to have. There's more success to experience. There's more laughter to enjoy, more children to teach, more friends to influence and help. And if what you were put here to do hasn't been done, you can't be harmed. There will be protection around you as you act and move and become what you were meant to be that you may never see, may never realize. But I can promise you this, there is no need to live the rest of your life, any part of your life, in fear. I was in a hotel room a couple of months ago, and I was ironing a shirt. And the television was going down at the other end of the room, and I was kind of halfway listening, and I heard this guy. It was on one of the network news shows, and he was doing the person of the week thing, giving the person of the week, and I was kind of barely out of the corner, and I heard him say, and so the person of the week, and he gave the date, the person of the week for is Norman Borlaug. And when he said that, I put the iron down, I ran in there, I couldn't believe it. My jaw was around my knees. Norman Borlaug. I couldn't believe it. They said, Norman Borlaug, person of the week, credited with saving the lives of over 2 billion people on our planet. I was blown away. I didn't know the guy was still alive. 91-year-old Norman Borlaug. I knew who he was. Norman Borlaug had hybridized corn and wheat for arid climates. He had won the Nobel Prize because he had created a situation where he had been able to plant a specific type of corn and wheat that had saved the lives of people in Africa and throughout Europe and the plains of Siberia and Central and South America. Been credited literally with saving 2 billion people on our planet. Norman Borlaug. And it really just kind of irritated me to see him get person of the week because I knew it wasn't Norman Borlaug that saved the 2 billion people. It was Henry Wallace. See, Henry Wallace was the Vice President of the United States under Roosevelt. I know a lot of people think, no, wait a minute, I thought Truman was Vice President. That's true. But the first Vice President Roosevelt ever had was a man named Henry Wallace, the former Secretary of Agriculture, who after that term was dumped off the ticket in favor of someone else. But while Henry Wallace was Vice President of the United States, he used the power of that office to create a station in Mexico whose sole purpose was to hybridize corn and wheat for arid climates. and he hired a young man named Norman Borlaug to run it. So Norman Borlaug got the Nobel Prize, and Norman Borlaug got the Person of the Week. But I'm thinking it was really Henry Wallace that saved the 2 billion people. Unless maybe it was George Washington Carver. Everybody knows Carver and knows about the peanut thing and the sweet potato thing, but what they don't know is that when George Washington Carver was a student at Iowa State University, he had a dairy sciences professor who allowed his 6-year-old little boy to go on botanical expeditions on Saturday and Sunday afternoons. And George Washington Carver took this little 6-year-old boy and put a love for plants in him and a vision for what they could do for humanity. And it was George Washington Carver who took that little 6-year-old Henry Wallace and shaped him and pointed his life in a direction long before he ever became Vice President of the United States. So when you think about it, it is amazing, isn't it, that George Washington Carver flapped those butterfly wings over here and had that peanut thing going, flapped those butterfly wings over here and had that sweet potato thing going. He flapped his wings back here and had that victory garden idea that fed over half the Americans during the World War II. But while nobody was looking, he just flapped his wings a couple of times with a 6-year-old boy and just happened to save the lives of 2 billion people and counting. So I'm thinking, Carver for Person of the Week. Unless maybe it was the farmer from Diamond, Missouri, a man named Moses who had a wife named Susan. They lived in a slave state, but they didn't believe in slavery. Well, this was a problem for these psychopaths like Quantrill's raiders who would ride through and kill people and burn things. And one night on Moses and Susan's farm in early January, Quantrill's raiders rode through and they burned the barn and they shot some people and they grabbed some people, and one of the people that they took was a woman named Mary Washington who refused to let go of her infant baby George. Now Mary Washington was Susan's best friend, and Susan was distraught. And because his wife was so upset, Moses sent word out through neighbors and sent a query here and a question here. And after 10 days, had actually created a meeting, had set a meeting with an offshoot group of Quantrill's raiders. And he took a horse and he went 4 hours north to a crossroads in Kansas. And on a cold January night, right in the middle of the night, he met 4 of Quantrill's raiders who showed up with the burlap sacks tied over their heads with the holes cut out for their eyes. And Moses traded his only horse for what they threw him in a bag. And as he caught it and they thundered off on their horses, he got down on his knees and Moses took that bag apart and pulled out a little infant baby, cold, almost dead, and he put that baby inside his coat next to his skin and wrapped that baby around with his body, and he walked that baby out, talking to that child, promising that baby he would raise him as his own, and that he would educate him, and that he would, to honor his mother, who he knew was already dead, he would give the baby his name. And that is how Moses and Susan Carver came to raise that little baby, George Washington. So when you think about it, it was really the farmer from Diamond, Missouri that saved the 2 billion people. Unless maybe. And see, the point is we could do this all night. Because who really knows who it is who saved the 2 billion people? Who knows who it is whose move, whose action at a particular time changed the entire course of the planet, 2 billion people and counting? Who knows who it was? And who knows who it is in your life, in your future? Who knows who it is whose life will be changed by your actions tonight and tomorrow night and the next day. There are generations yet unborn whose existence depends on the choices you make and the action you take. Because everything you do matters. Every move you make, every action you take, not just for you, not just for your family, not just for your hometown, everything you do matters to all of us. Forever.